Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and it's time for the 10K Q&A. Thank you everybody for your questions. I received over 100 in less than 4 hours, so apologies in advance if I don't answer your question. I'm going to try to do my best to power through everything. We have 10 pages to get through. If you're new to the channel, these type of videos are more like a podcast long video type format where I just answer these questions in real time. A ton of concentrated knowledge. If you really like this format, I do it every month in Patreon, but as usual, hopefully there is something here of value and entertaining for you. So let's go ahead and get started with Vegansaur. Nice dad pun right out of the gate. Do you think the TCG should rely so hard on Charizard cards or try to promote other Pokemon? I would say that they just tap into the natural demand that's there for Charizard. It's a very popular Pokemon from the jump. I wouldn't say they rely on it too much. I think they do a good job actually of giving you a diverse range of species in sets. Of course, every species collector can't be pleased by Pokemon. I know some people want full arts for their favorite species, but at the end of the day, I think they do a good job of balancing out in general. Next question, should we be calculating capital gains tax when selling cards? Aren't they technically considered a capital asset? I'd have to think about that for a while, but in general, my impression of trading cards collectibles is that they're unregistered assets and they're very ambiguous by nature. In fact, I would say most collectibles aren't valuable. And when I say that, I'm including energy cards, commons, uncommons, all that bulk stuff that people never talk about. That's going to be majority of quantity out there. So they are very ambiguous, so I don't think they fit into the predetermined notches that are in tax law. But I'd really have to think about that one for a while. Trader to Go asks, are collectibles something you planned on specializing in forever, or do you have some sort of end goal? It's a good question. Honestly, I just started this out of interest and snowballed over time, just chased that passion, adapted over time, and I never really set out a specific 30-year plan. I definitely have general goals or plateaus to hit financially or with collectibles, but I enjoy it. I'm in it pretty much all in at this point, and I plan to do that for the foreseeable future. Next question, will you ever show some of your favorite sports card collectibles? I know in some videos you have some in the background, but it'd be cool to see some. I don't know all that much about vintage sports. I would try to incorporate more. It's tough to always hit every type of viewer. I know some people want to see sports. Most people want to see Pokemon. Some people want to talk about finance. If I can think of an idea, because that's usually what I do, I have an idea and I'm like, hey, I should talk about that in a video. And if I can incorporate sports stuff, I'll bring them over and try to show them off while I talk about them. Next question, Ryan. Hey, man, congrats on reaching 10K. Appreciate it. Just want to say, as someone getting older, 25 is not older. You're still in the modern era. You're not vintage yet at 25. I love how you keep it real with everything. My question is, what kind of feeling do you have when you held one of your first prize cards, Pikachu Illustrator, etc.? That's actually a really good question. I remember when I first bought the Pikachu Illustrator card, that was the most I ever spent on a card at the time. So I bought it in person, in cash, and I remember holding it afterwards and just being like, this is it. This is the most valuable card. And the easiest way to summarize that is surreal. Even this memory is surreal. It's even hard to articulate what it's like because I don't think it's fully set in. I don't think it ever will set in. When I do go look at those cards, it still hasn't fully set in. I don't think it ever will. So, next question. What was your first ever big purchase when you first started collecting? Probably the Tropical Wind or Trophy Kangaskhan. Kind of piggybacking off of the Illustrator thing, I remember just buying, at the time, probably around $1,000, which is just steal today. But it was that same feeling of surrealism where I was like, whoa, I just spent $1,000 on one card. And yeah, it was now well over 10 years ago. Next question, Berndo asks, hey Scott, more people seem to forget how to differentiate between data, facts, and emotion. Besides politics and comment sections everywhere, I've also noticed this in our hobby, from emotional purchases and scumbag listings to underrated items. Where do you see mixing up fact and emotion the most? P.S. Will we ever get a philosophy content for the 11K Q&A? Just like I said with the sports thing, I'd love to talk about philosophy, but I don't know how many viewers would appreciate that. But as for your question, I think in general, markets are very diverse, and sometimes even the illogical answer is better. So piggybacking off of the question about what was it like when I made my first big purchase, if I asked any financial advisor about that prior, they would have said, absolutely not. This is ridiculous. This is such a risk. It's so speculative. It's a terrible idea. And here we are today. So that's a great example of something that's, by all the experts together, would agree is illogical. Now, I get what you're saying about the more discernible stuff that you can prove through data. I just want to get that idea out there because markets are interesting because they always aren't binary. If I had to name one thing where people get wrong, fact, emotion, or whatever, I think the biggest thing I do dislike, and it actually made me stop talking about my private sales, is when people make slanderous or like defamatory accusations about someone's sale. I had this happen to me when I would share a private sale and people were like, oh, that's fake, shield, whatever. And I was like, okay, I'll just stop talking about it and keep this buyer pool and information to myself. So that would probably be the one thing, and that's more in the immaturity realm, like guys who just don't understand markets. Their exposure is like a few of their buddies who are still in school, so they can't imagine someone paying $10,000 for a card. So I think that would be my one. If I had to fill in the blank there, that would probably be the thing. Is that when there's like a quantifiable sale, people will just object and be like, "Oh, it didn't happen." So, next question: do you collect comics? Thoughts on the hobby as a whole? I have a couple. I have a few Star Wars, very pointed purchases. I wouldn't really consider myself a collector, but I do appreciate what it's done for other markets. It's a long lineage there with comics. Some really big spenders, long history, goes back to like the World Wars. So that's what I do appreciate about it. I would say I appreciate it from afar. That's how I see comics. Next question. Hey Scott, I was wondering if you had any more interest in making more financial videos, like your actual wealth versus acting wealthy one from a while ago. That video was a big eye opener for me personally, and it was my favorite video from you to this date. Appreciate that's good feedback. I didn't realize that resonated so well. Thank you for everything you do. Can't wait for you to reach 20K. Kind of like what I mentioned earlier with the philosophy and sports thing. It's tough to really please every viewer. I try to balance it. I try not to talk too much about finance because at the end of the day, I have a huge sentimentality to these cards, and I don't want to be all money, 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 because I think there's a lot of that in the hobby that is especially unexamined right now. I could try to incorporate, I actually have a video coming up. It's going to be titled something like Big Risk, Big Gain, where it's definitely about finance, talking about purchases and definitely financially driven, where I pepper in stuff and examples from the hobby, but I'll keep that in mind. I appreciate that feedback. Next question, where's the best place to buy cards? Obviously, the smpratte eBay store. AGMD asks, somewhat subjective, is just me or did the card art peak during the EX era and then kind of dwindle from there? All my nostalgia is from WotC, but looking at the EX era art recently has gotten me really interested in those sets. I'd suggest looking at the Sun and Moon era because there is the most diverse range of artwork, I think, out of all eras. Like modern, while it's saturated, there's a ton of beautiful art, especially in the common uncommons. There's a ton of variety. So, and it's affordable. So if you like artwork, that'd be a great bang for your buck option. Next question, do you invest in the stock market? I do a 401k, but stocks are boring. They're boring, and a lot of them are considered conservative. Obviously index funds, Dow Jones, stuff like that. But I actually don't subscribe to that idea. I think that even if you are someone who has a ton of knowledge in markets, you have no direct control or access to what goes on in businesses. One day you can have some issue happen and it cuts the stock in half or whatever. So I have a 401k, but my general answer is stocks are boring. Next question. Hey Scott, it's Marco. We met at Worlds in DC. Oh, actually, I remember you came up for a quick picture. Man, Whirlwinds was just a whirlwind for me. I've slept 9 hours the whole weekend total. I mean, there was a ton going on. It was a last minute choice to go, but I remember you. Glad I got to meet you in person. My question is, how did you have the money for your first big purchase? Were you working, or did your parents buy the card for you? Did you have money from flipping cards or less? Anyways, love the content. Congrats on 10K. All right, I'll answer it. Sorry, I just apologize. Get back from hockey, got out of the shower, got the little clean Top Gun sweat going on here. It's a thing. Go watch Top Gun. You'll see it. As for finance, people always ask me this. Like, what? Did you have a trust fund? Like, if you Google my name, Pratt with an E on the end, we're all related. It's all one big happy family. And I'm sure you'll run into people who are very successful. They have successful businesses, whatever it may be. And people will say, oh, I bet that's where Scott gets his money from. Nope. Self-made. And if there is a trust fund out there with buku millions of dollars in it, I've never had access to it, no knowledge of it. But everything I've done to this point is entirely self-made. I had a negligible job while I was in school. A key point here is I lived at home while I was in school. That was a key point. I didn't know what I wanted to do initially in university. A lot of my friends would go out to these top schools after a semester or two. They'd come back, blow all this money in immediately. I was like, this is ridiculous. It's a terrible move. I had friends that would, some on scholarship, some paid out of pocket. They'd get the university experience, throw $10,000 a year at the university experience, and now what that looks like is debilitating debt today. So that was maybe the thing I could say is that very frugal, optimized a lot. I was very minimal, and I did throw a ton of money into Pokemon. Everything I made went into Pokemon, but I can't emphasize how much I was engaged. Like, it was obsessive. It was obsessive. When I'm talking about doing this like no one else did, guaranteed. I mean, the proof's in the pudding. Like, I went so hard in the beginning, still do this day, but in the beginning it was nuts. So that's all I could say is incremental growth over time, very consistent and persistent, chasing that passion. Similar to like what Rudy says in his video. Very similar to that. Hessel asks, what's your favorite YouTubers? In Pokemon, if I had to name the best YouTuber in Pokemon, which even that term can be, it's subjective. I think Jay Witz is like, hits everything. Jay Witz edits his videos, makes proper videos, number one. The guy is deeply rooted in the hobby. I mean, I remember him from back in the Poke Gym days. He's deeply rooted, very nice guy, very just kind person. He hits everything. He hits every demographic. Some other people in Pokemon that I like, met Leon Hart in person, such a nice dude. Glad we finally got to meet at Worlds. Max Mofo is funny AF. Like, you could put me in acting classes and I could never be like that dude. Like, he's just so naturally goofy. A nice little contrast there. So, but yeah, those would be my favorite PokeTubers. Michael asks, other than Pokemon and Magic, have you collected any other TCGs from your childhood? Not really. It's just mostly Pokemon and Magic. And Magic actually is more like in hindsight. I just really like the art and the history. Next question, if you had $10,000 that you need to spend in one day on Pokemon cards or packs, what would you buy? That's a good question. I can just check what I bought last month because I'm doing this every month. So whatever opportunity, probably if I had to point to something, it's going to be stuff like this. I really like to chase that rarity, that final level chase. But it's a mix. I mean, every month is different. I would say I get a lot of collections now because of my YouTube and brand or whatever you want to say. So I'm buying a lot more collections I did years ago. So it's a huge range. I'll get WotC stuff. I'll get maybe mid-EX stuff. I'll get Japanese stuff. So it's all over the place, honestly. Effects asks, what would you order at Chipotle? Qdoba. That's what I'd order. FaZe asks, what does your family think about your business? Oh, here it is. This is the good one. Time to get into therapy. Initially, my family was critical. I remember when packages arrived, like in 2006, 2007, they were critical. They weren't supportive. In fact, most people weren't supportive. Where now, today, it's different. And I think it's more because they have to acknowledge it, because I'm probably making more than most of these people with their judgmental eyes. So now it's respected because the money's there. But in the beginning, they were very cautious. And it makes sense. I mean, when there's nothing there to indicate that it's going to grow, what else? What are you going to look to? Or, you're going to think that's a huge risk. So PFM asks, can we see your rabbit? Thanks, PFM. I'll give you a serious answer. She's 10 years old. I don't know if I'd bring her over here for a video. It'd be... The age is the excuse, but maybe I'll do a picture. I have a shirt with a rabbit on it. I'll hold the rabbit. I'll make a meme. You heard it here today. I'll make that meme happen. That's what I can do. Gold Star Charizard asks, what type of YouTube channels would you like to see emerge in Pokemon? Honestly, I think they're all there. I think all the bases are covered. Maybe just a little bit more of certain types of content, but you have a never-ending amount of pack openings. You have people like me discussing that. I think that's the new frontier, maybe. But honestly, I think there's plenty out there. So I really don't know a new thing. Maybe just more people who understand the serious side of the hobby. I'm talking about more the rarer cards or more the in-depth stuff. Perhaps something along those lines. Next question. Hey, I love your content. You're smart at what you do. Oh, thank you. Let me tip my fedora. These questions have been on my mind for some time. We know PSA grades sealed booster packs, but what would you say if PSA graded some sealed booster boxes? That's a really good question. Would you approve of this idea? Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think actually protection for boxes is lacking. I know there's aftermarket options, but I don't think they're going to have the same continuity as something. Now, I will say PSA needs to improve their pack case holder. That thing needs to change. But yeah, I think they should. I think they should do boxes. No Life Snowlex asks, what do you think about grading new Japanese card secret rare for our trainers? Do you think there will be a premium down the road? When I can predict the future, I'll make the appropriate $1 million Patreon option for that, so people like, Jeff Bezos, Microsoft, and all these places can tap into what the future is going to be. But until then, I can't. And my answer would be for this is that with Modern, there's yet to be no long term yet. There's no down the road yet with Modern. We're still waiting. So nothing's really grown significantly with Modern. So I think it's just unanswerable. Rattle asks, do you own... I already know it's going to be about Chell. I don't even have to read it. Do you own anything that was typeset by Chell? Chell, no. No, I don't. Chell, no. I don't own anything by Chell. Chell tried to typeset me down and talk to me and say, I know your favorite Pokemon's Blastoise, and I have one here that has Goofy Comic Sans writing on it. But let me just tell you about it. Just chill out and listen to me. And I just didn't want to do it. I didn't feel comfortable. That's all I got to say about that. I know that he's still out there giving everyone his top tier advice, but I didn't subscribe to Chell. So Adrian asks, how do you feel about grading individual booster packs and grading Pokemon Game Boy games? At what point in your life did you realize you wanted to be an entrepreneur, and what was your first business venture? As for grading packs and games, it already happens and should continue to happen. The only caveat there is change the case for PSA, for modern packs. For being an entrepreneur, it just happened naturally. Kind of like what I mentioned earlier. I just chased that passion. Consistent commitment to it. Just doing it over and over and over, day by day. Mythosisyphus, pushing that boulder up every day. Every single day. Still to this day. Never ends. Even when you have more money, never ends. You just keep going. So that is the general perspective. It wasn't just like this one big thing. It just happened gradually over time. Ryan asks, hey, I know you're a hardcore collector. Do you ever get into the trading card actual game? I get this question a lot, and I like it. I'm interested in it, but I just don't have the time. It's like a full-time job now. If they did an old-school WotC era thing, absolutely I'd be on it, but I just don't have the time. The Rabbit Channel asks, congrats, Rabbit Channel. Congrats to 10K. What do you think of some of the boxes like Skyward that have a huge disparity between the expected value and the actual price? Also, why is PFM so cute? I should post that photo from Worlds as the thumbnail for this video. But you already got your question, PFM. But to give you an answer, I think it's just because they're so scarce, the expected value and actual value is always in flux. There's not enough of them to give you that cemented price point. Winter's ass, we're just rolling here through Discord. Winter's ass, hey Scott, congratulations on 10K. All the work you put into making the community more accessible and newer people is greatly appreciated. It means a lot, Winters, honestly. Appreciate that. My question is, how many 2001 Tropical Winds have you seen in total since you started collecting, and why is the card so elusive? It's a good question. Maybe 4, around there. A very rare card, as most people know, was given out at the Tropical Mega Battle, but only to the Japanese contestants. The Japanese one is the top. People want it for a number of reasons. Number one, I think it's like the proper release because it's a Japanese tournament. Also, it's numbered. It has that number there. It's the bane of everyone who's trying to do the P promo existence because it's just god tier rarity. Even if the number is true, 24 of estimated release, even if you want to double that, that's still god tier rarity. You know, that's like illustrator rarity. So I think it's because it is niche. How it was given out was more of like a playset type deal. So maybe some were destroyed. Maybe people aren't aware of them, but it's certainly one of the rarest cards in the hobby. Just to reiterate for people who aren't aware, to this date, I'm the only owner of the PSA 9 example of that card. It's been that way for 10 years. It was the only one to pop for 10 years. So it's a very rare item. And yeah, that's just maybe 4 is what I've seen. Next question from Pizers. Hey, smpratte, what was your favorite Level X Pokemon card? What do you think of them as a set in terms of scarcity and overall value? I was going to joke and say none because the Level X was just okay. Like a Mewtwo or Gengar comes to mind, but it's just okay. Like, Level X is a unique moment where Pokemon was it was figuring out its identity. There was some upward mobility, but not like 2011 type or 2012. So, I don't know, man. It's one of those moments where if you want the whole comprehensive history, it's there. It's unique. Not a lot of organic demand, at least right now. Joshua asks, why have the WotC Seal boxes suddenly exploded, all caps, in price lately? Do you feel they will drop below what they are now? Again, predict the future is something I just don't have yet. But they've exploded because they're scarce. They're dynamic. You can open them, keep them sealed, open keep some of the packs, open some of the packs, grade the cards. Stores can buy them, collectors can buy them, YouTubers can buy them, investors can buy them. They hit everybody. So that's why they are exponentially increasing. I would say they plateaued a bit. If they cooled down a bit since like a month or so. Devoted asks, first off, congrats on your much deserved 10K sub. My question is, do you think Shadowless base is following the same pattern as first edition? You don't have to answer this, but do you think there's more Shadowless in first edition since they were put in the theme decks? Very good question. This is basically the classic Shadowless for first edition. There was a lot of Shadowless hype a couple years ago. There was a resurgence, and people were talking crazy. They were like, oh, Shadowless is going to outdo first edition base. Absolutely not. Turn it into a meme. I'm going to do it one more time. Absolutely not. There's no way. Shadowless is too niche. It's a collector term. While I love it, I absolutely adore Shadowless. When I still to this day, when I see a Shadowless card in a collection I bought, I'm like, oh my god, Shadowless. It's worth 50 cents or $1, it's still Shadowless. Because that was so rare when I was younger. However, it's first edition, Shadowless, unlimited, for life. That's the hierarchy. First edition has the most comprehensive pop report, all the inertia, and more importantly, it's more ubiquitous. If someone comes into Pokemon, they understand, oh, first edition, I've heard that in books, I've heard that in artwork and other things. Shadowless is like, what? What is that? It's a collector term. It's more niche. As for theme decks and things like that, I could speculate and say, yeah, there might be more out there because of that release, but no one can say for sure because WotC didn't give us, those numbers like they do with Magic. So it's always a guesstimate, but yeah, I think there is something to that. There's legs to that idea about the theme deck release. Albuquerque asks, what's the total value of cards in your collection and the cards you've sold combined? My collection's 7 figures. The value, I can't just say like, oh, it's $2,147,327. I can't give you an exact number, but it's certainly 7 figures. Maybe, I really just couldn't speculate, but that would be a good baseline. As for stuff I've sold, yeah, similar. Similar is what I'll say on the record. Speed by Skill asks, as prices of high-tier collectibles keep rising when do you decide it's time to sell? This is also a good question. There's a saying in Magic for Alpha. When's the right time to sell Alpha? And the answer is never. That's the answer. And I think for the high-end stuff, that's generally true. Because a lot of what happens in high-end is you sell it and it's really difficult to get it back. I know I'm preaching to the choir because there's so many people there's customers I've had from years ago sold something to me or sold it to the market, and they come back like, hey, I want to buy this thing back. And it's so hard for them to because now it's quadrupled in price. So there is no real right time to sell. Right time is more defined by you and what your needs are, what your goals are. That's really where the right time core is embedded, is in that rather than, some point in the market. You can, even Warren Buffett, they don't sell at the high and buy at the lowest. That's not a thing. It's always somewhere in here. So Turtle Todd asks, can you do more openings? Maybe. Yeah, maybe I'll try to do some more. I have so many videos I need to do, but keep that in mind. What is your favorite Pokemon card? Most worthy card or rarest card? Well, most valuable is the Illustrator. There's a lot. Like, here's one of my favorites. Brought the Southern Island over. One of my favorite. I don't even care if it goes to $0 or $1 million. I don't care. I love the Southern Island artwork. Nate asks, will you ever do a deeper dive in your collection? It's a catch-22. I'm at a point now where if I show some of the stuff I have, there's a couple potential drawbacks. First off, I'm showing a position that most people probably don't have. And the value of showing that position is sometimes as valuable as the cards themselves. Also, in showing that position, kind of like when I joke with like the 30, 50 Rattatas, when I show that position, it can also disrupt certain people's collections. I don't want that either. So I try to show some stuff. I'm very forgetful. Like, my business model is buy stuff, forget it. Hopefully I find it 5 years from now. I try to show stuff that does come to the door. I've been trying to do more collection-based things as they come to me. But yeah, it's hard to do a comprehensive breakdown, to be honest, because I don't know everything that I have in total. I have stuff in multiple locations, so I have to go through everything. But yeah, that's the general reason why I don't, show every little bit. Next question. Congrats on 10K. Any idea what happens to the actual physical artworks and illustrations for Pokemon cards? Has anything like this ever sold in the open market, or does Pokemon keep it all in a vault somewhere? Very, very good question. They do keep them. We have no access to them. It's not like Magic where the artists... It's the opposite of Magic. Now, Magic artists can sell their stuff. With Pokemon, it's ironclad. I don't even think they could draw Charizard for their family members. It's very strict. The contracts are binding. No original artwork has ever surfaced. Free to ask, within the scope of Pokemon single cards, what defines a high-end item? It's a good question. I would say 10K is like a general line in the sand, I would say, when it goes to $10,000. You know, so I keep pointing to this because the Pika Ring's here. But like something like this is a great example. You know, something of that caliber that has like immense rarity, immense difficulty to acquisition, whether it's a really quantifiable hard grade item or a scarce box, you know, things like that. I would say 10K is a general value line that I would draw. Again, general. It's not absolute. How valuable is your network towards collecting? How long did it take for you to establish your network when you first began? I honestly don't think about it in that sense. I guess it's more for the audience to decide. I don't know. I never think about that. So I don't have these like specific 30-year like track planned out. I need to develop my network and meet this person, do this thing. So in general, not sure how to answer. Hi there from Europe. What are the 3 best tips for those who, after many years, would like to collect again WotC cards to play old-fashioned matches? Unfortunately, didn't have a lot of money available, beginning from 0. So I started from 0. Start small with what you like. My first purchase back in this hobby was Southern Island English, $30 sealed. That was my first purchase. And that was probably 1 month of purchases back then. So start small with what you like. Take time. Time is on your side. Most of the people in this hobby are young. We're all super young here. Even the vintage people like me who've crossed that 30-year line, the hobby is so young. There's so much availability. Prices aren't blowing up. You have plenty of time. Slow and steady is the way to go. Start with what you enjoy. That's the biggest thing I tell you. Simon asks, simple question. Any plans to do some more videos with Gary? Love hearing the discussions between you two, and I'd love to get a closer look at his collection and his stories. I always kick it around. Like Gary and I will talk every now and then on the phone, and maybe I should record those conversations. But I always say, hey, you know, when would you want me to come down again? He's like, anytime. And it's just a matter of me just finding that, you know, that leisure time where I can just go down there and relax. But it's something I'll do again. Just need to figure out when. Katie asks, smpratte, is there any avenue to sell cards collections through a vendor similar to consignment? For those who are not eBay savvy, have the availability, or know how to start a seller page? Okay, so basically you're asking, or even collectors who buy collections. Okay, like Rudy does. I do that every month. I'll be honest with you, I'm more, like when someone said high-end earlier, that's usually what I focus on primarily. However, you can always message me with what you have. Worst case scenario is I just say, no, I'm not interested. But I'm always buying collections all the time, every month. I actually have a video that I've logged that talks about 3 main ways to sell your collection, so maybe that will answer this in more detail. But in general, consignment auction houses are going to be your option if you want to go that route. Otherwise, you're going to sell to someone like me or a business who's going to give you a lower margin, but they're going to buy everything in one scoop. You do no work. So again, that video, that when it comes out, it's going to hit this with a lot more detail and explanation. Babylot asks, there are prevalent markets for Pokemon Magic. Why can't the same be said for Yu-Gi-Oh? I don't know, man. Yu-Gi-Oh's on the come up. Like, there's a lot happening right now with Yu-Gi-Oh. There's a lot of growth. I don't know if it has the depth of Pokemon. I would say that's what I would differentiate. You're talking highest grossing media franchise, but Yu-Gi-Oh has some legs to it. It's on the come up right now. I would say it is lower than Pokemon Magic, especially in the West. Now in the East, it's a different ball game. But yeah, it's just a different type. It's a different identity. Next question, how long have you been collecting cards in general? I mean, I started when I was a kid, when this first came out during the original era. I remember still to this day being on the playground, trying to name the Pokédex. And then I took a break in high school because I was too cool, popping my collar, gelling my hair. And then I started back up again in college, like mid-2000s, and just kept going until today. Next question, hey man, did you ever call Jenny? 8675309. What? No, but I don't know if Jenny called me. I haven't checked. Lucky Drift, what is the least expensive card you have that you like owning? I don't know least expensive, but these are a great example of stuff that I love that's not going to break the bank. Whatever these cards are, I just love them. I buy them all the time. And whenever I do my binder videos, you'll see it. If there's space, I always put Southern Island in the back of the binder just so I know when I open up a binder, I can always look at Southern Island if I want to. The English Marksman, we got a paragraph to read. Hey Scott, congrats on the subs. My question is, with such an extensive collection built up experience in the hobby, what would you say brings you the most excitement these days in regards to Pokemon? Does gathering ever more older rare minter cards have the thrill of the chase excite you? Perhaps newer sets, toys, merch, card artwork? Maybe the challenges of running a business around Pokemon or interacting with the community, building relationships via E4, Discord, YouTube, or real life. Cheers, your favorite British science nerd, Alastrius. We're still rolling through Discord here. Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I would probably say everything, a bit of everything. I do, like, even Discord. Like, I like just chilling on Discord when I have time. I'm off the clock. For anyone who catches me on Discord, I'm off the clock, just trying to relax. That's a nice part of the hobby. It's nice just talking to people, getting to know people. It's strength as a hobby in general, because what we are doing at the end of the day is not like collecting these cards, but we're connecting with other people doing the same thing, and it's good to build those relationships. So yeah, that's a major part that I would say I value, and then also just more of the same. Always, I'll set a new goal. I have some crazy goals I've set for stuff, so I'm always setting new goals. Next question, hey smpratte, I would like to know if you could play guitar for us again. It was quite chill the last time, and I missed the view you had. Just like those other videos, I could maybe pepper one in there before Pokemon. I'm a little rusty. Can't give you the same view that I did there, but yeah, maybe that's something I could do. Jacko asks, can't remember if this has been asked, but what's your favorite movie? Congrats on 10 subs. That's tough. I mean, it used to be Gladiator when I was younger, but I mean, there's so many good movies now. Like, I watched Burning recently. That was a good Korean movie. It's hard. There's just a lot. I'd like actually give a shout out, like he's watching this. Watch Us and Get Out. I like that. All of that. What Jordan Peele's doing, all of that's happening. I like that. Saw that movie somewhat recently, and yeah. Next question. Been here since the start of your channel. Quick question. What should be more valuable? First edition Neo Destiny box or PSA 10 Neo Destiny Master Set? That's tough. They're not always mutually exclusive, so they could be parallel. I know they sell similarly. I know a Master Set's gone above 10K, but I would say it's more niche because the amount of people who want the box versus the set are different. More people want the box than the set. Anthony asks, congrats. I love watching your channel grow over the years. For the question, are there any new collectibles or investment vehicles catching your eye? DBS is fun. This whole collecting investment vehicle thing, in general, I just can't give you a general answer like that, but I mean, I'm just doing Pokemon and Magic mostly right now. Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon asks, is Yu-Gi-Oh! Collecting market outpacing Pokemon? No. There is growth. Pokemon's super deep. Pokemon's got so much going on. Let's just cut out all the cards, which is a significant portion. You got the video games. You got plushes. You got, like, merch. All this merch. They're the king of merch. So, no. I mean, you'd have to really, like, edit that, contextualize that to make that point. But in general, no, they aren't. David E.S., why do you think Beckett returned several of those cards, altered those Charizard cards? Some came back stabbed and altered on them, and others got sent back without slab. Yeah, I think it's incompetence on Beckett. Clearly those cards were not altered. I don't know what Beckett was thinking, but maybe they didn't feel like working that day. But yeah, general people who just opened the packs and immediately sent them to Beckett didn't meticulously, professionally alter them, so I have no idea where that came from. Nathan asks, would you be able to talk more about the mid-era sets such as Diamond and Pearl? I feel like there's a lot of movement there, and it's not being touched on as much. It's not being discussed as much because there wasn't much interest. That was a very low point for the hobby. People always talk about the Gold Star era, but in my opinion, I think the lowest lackluster time was DP. It was Diamond and Pearl. There's not much going on there. You don't have the Gold Stars. You don't have EX cards. So it's really hard to say, oh, there's this huge thing. Everyone's chase card focused now. That's the general thing. Chase cards. Where's chase cards? So they didn't really have that. So it does naturally fly under the radar. Hey, Scott, I got back into collecting again because of your videos and thoughtfulness you show regarding the hobby at large. I just want to thank you and say I really appreciate the effort you put in. Really appreciate that feedback. That out of the way, I guess my question is about how you go about acquiring some of the rare Japanese promos. Like, the Diamond and Pearl, Mysterious Pearl, Pikachu Victory Ring, and someone like me who's just getting into collecting, where would you go about acquiring those cards? Pratte, number one, but outside of that, there is no one place. Like, if anything, the thing that's misleading when I show like all these cards, or like I show like, oh, I have a couple of these trophy cards or whatever, is that it's such an exception. Like, it's just like literally no one else has that position on trophy cards. So it's like there's no one place. And if you had to say it, it would be me, but I'm not actively selling most of those cards. So that's what you're always bargaining with, is there are people who have some, maybe one or two or whatever, but they are hard to incentivize to sell. And then when they do, it's just everyone's going to crawl over that and try to compete. It's ultra competitive. It's ultra difficult. I would say it's the hardest thing to chase and acquire in this hobby. So unfortunately, there is no easy answer. Michael asks, after all these years, what is the most disappointing thing you have witnessed in Pokemon as a collector, financial-wise or personal-wise? Love your videos. That's a very, very good question. I don't like to talk about negative things in my videos because I want to like push some positivity, give chill vibes, make people feel good. But the most negative thing, I think, are just negative people. There are people who, I think things that come to mind, which they aren't really as prevalent now because they're so ridiculous that people understand how ridiculous they are. But I remember when I sold an Illustrator through Heritage like 3 years ago, there were people who were like, oh, it was shill bid and all this stuff. I literally recorded myself, my screen, watching the auction live. For those who aren't aware, Heritage does like a hammer auction where they say, okay, we're at 25,000, we're at 30,000. Do I have 30? Do I have 35? They do like a proper auction format like that. I have an actual screen recording of me watching it live. And there are still people to this day who are so permanently butthurt because they're probably so unhappy with their lives that they'll just make up some, libelous garbage. And I think that's probably the most negative thing I've experienced. But with that said, this is like an exception. Most people are not like this. Most people are friendly. Most people just want to talk about the cards and enjoy the hobby. These people are like these little butthurt, irrelevant people who this is the only way they can kind of feel relevant is just by being negative. So, this is not unique to Pokemon. It's in everything in life, no matter what you do. There's always going to be someone jealous out there. There you go, Rattle. But yeah, that would probably be the thing that if I had to name something. But again, it's an exception. Most people are not like that. Most people are very kind. William asks, what's the worth of all your Pokemon card collection? As I mentioned earlier, 7 figures. What do you think of the new card design for Sword and Shield? Yeah, it's a tough one. That's a tough one, man. I don't know how I feel. I'm a wait and see type guy, so I'll wait a little bit longer and see what else is going on. But they look like Magic cards a bit. What's the story with Legendary Collection? Why has it become so expensive? It's funny because Legendary Collection and Base 2 used to be synonymous. No one cared about them until like 4 years ago with all the social media hype. There's a lot of hype in it, but at the same time, there's a lot of like inflection points that keep it up. I don't know much Legendary Collection. If I do, it's by accident. Next question. I really love you, man. I started collecting again because of you. Heart emoji. I just got one question. Should I buy the PSA 9 World Hollow cards? Please answer, and I would love to hear what you say in the future. Love you, man. Keep it up. Well, I appreciate the love. We got a lot of heart emojis going on here, but I don't know what cards you're talking about. So, I don't know. PSA in general has good value. That's what I can tell you. It's a good value purchase. Okay. Getting to the back 9 here. We got a couple more pages. How do you combat people who believe all their cards are worth thousands and say that they're worth that? Example, people asking crazy numbers on eBay. It's okay. Like, it doesn't bother me. I don't have time to even notice them, but it's not a big deal. I would say, yeah, if you're, say like the BuzzFeed article where it says Bill is worth like $5,000, that's obviously wrong. But if you have stuff like this and you want to list it well above market, more power to you. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime item. Don't listen to anybody else. Do what you want to do. Brian asks, favorite crystal card? None of them. No, but if I had to say what, I would say Ho-Oh. I like Ho-Oh. Crystals, I think the thing I like about crystals is people think they're gold stars, and they're not. They're not the same pull rate, but the artwork is unique, the card style is unique. I do like Ho-Oh. I like the whole like Aztec vibe going on. Oh god, no rarity question coming up. No rarity Japanese base is the oldest Pokemon card, also pretty rare. Why do you not think this is awesome? Thank you, congrats on 10K. Because nobody does. I mean, the market speaks for itself. And to give you a more pointed answer here, So the first Pokemon cards that are produced are that singing Jigglypuff and the Pikachu from '96, and I have probably some sitting here in bulk. Just because something's the first doesn't mean it's a direct correlation to enhanced value. Sure, there's a historical element to it, but there are plenty of cards that are first or rare or whatever from that era that have no premium attached to them. More specifically, why I don't like no rarity aesthetically is because the only bit that's really majorly different is it lacks a rarity symbol. That's not unique. That's not proprietary. There's plenty of other releases that lack rarity symbols. Even in modern era, there's plenty of unnumbered promos or promos that come out with no numbers on them or rarity symbols. So that's just not enough for me. If they made unique art or something going on, even throw a stamp on there, that's a little bit better. The lack of rarity symbol just isn't unique for me, and I think that's resonating most people. And then when you try to start adding a premium to that, you get to a price point where your consumer capital is probably going to go in that direction. So, I mean, the market speaks for itself. That is why it is. But again, just to reiterate, first does not mean automatic explosion. There are promos before these cards that, to this day, are like under $100. Dave asks, how do you obtain your cards? Do you put out one ads? I buy them all over the place, everywhere, all the time. I would say the only difference now is more people funnel to me than before because of my reach, brand, whatever you want to say, but that's the only difference. Hey, thank you for all you do for the hobby. My question is, do you see the UK-based 2000 print being as important as Shadowless? And do you feel that the grading company should attribute the 2000 base to it? Yes, to the last part of that question. No to the first part. I think earlier when I talked about first Shadowless Unlimited, base 2000 is going to be even more niche because it's localized to the UK. I've been aware of it for ages now, but kind of with the no rarity thing as well. It's just an added copyright. I know they're a little more washed out or lighter, but Shadowless is a much more vivid contrast in my opinion, and it's more rooted in like that nostalgia original era, which is like the core of serious collecting. So I think it has maybe more significance to grow with time, but I think again the market speaks for itself. Nike Swoosh asks, is there some type of ratio of general rule for price comparison between Japanese and English versions of the same card? No, there isn't. You can just looking them up online. You have to learn that some cards, like base Charizard Japanese, is a fraction of what English is, especially because there's no first edition Shadowless Unlimited. So you just really have to know the specific vocabulary for each card. Next question. What's your thoughts on the conspiracy theory for Hidden Fates? I didn't know there was a conspiracy theory. The Pokemon company graded and sold and bought the card to hype up the set? Or should I just put down the vape pen? Yes, you are taping and vaping and a little bit too much right there. Pokemon is not concerned about making $10,000. Like, do people not understand? Go look at Pokemon's annual revenue. People talk about $1 million, like that's a big thing. They're B, in billions with a B. Trace commas, B is what they're pulling in a year. $10,000 is not even worth their time if this conspiracy were, I don't know where this came from. Either way, it's a diminishing return anyway because the card is on the downward trend. Scott Mon asks, do you tend to lean away from PSA cert numbers and, from 26, 27, and so on? That's a decent question there. I would say I lean away more from certain sellers I know that regrade a ton. If I know a seller regrades every chase card 5 times, I just don't touch it. I can't trust it. That's just my personal standard. Whatever you want to do as a consumer, more power to you. But I'm more of the seller-based buy than the serial number. How did you come with the intro? It just kind of happened. I was like, maybe I need to slow it down a bit because sometimes I was a little too, I felt like I had to be more energetic or whatever, but it just happened naturally. Okay, so when was selling my Charizard GX from Hidden Fates for €369 a good deal? Sure. I mean, they're sell into the hype is all I could say about Charizard GX. Hey, Scott, longtime listener, first-time commenter. I really enjoy your content and the perspective you bring to the community. Keep up the great work. Now for my question, do you think I should... Okay. I recently bought a few bags of Doritos. We don't got time for this Echo Base. We're on the last leg here. We don't got time for these memes. But you should keep them sealed. If you got 3D Doritos, definitely keep those sealed. Congrats on 10K. My question is, what's the market like for lower PSA cards? Talk about this in Patreon a bit with some of my sales. They are picking up. They're definitely more niche, lower value, but they do sell more than they used to. Chase asks, which Pokemon investment do you regret the most? What did you learn from it? Good question. It's maybe the ones I missed more than the ones I bought. There's definitely boxes I should have bought. There's definitely a couple trophy cards I missed in the moment. Most of them, though, I think I focus on what I did right more than not, because I think you can really beat yourself up too much. I do that enough. So I would say it's on stuff that I just missed. Like I remember watching an auction. This is going to hurt. Get ready, guys. Hold on tight. Watching a first edition base box go for $1,000. We're talking like 2006, like way back when nobody was in the hobby. So yeah, there was one. Next question, outside of Pokemon cards, what do you feel is the most prized possession? Not necessarily value, but I wouldn't mind hearing that as well. I mean, I have Holy Grails and stuff for other markets, but honestly, like some of the signed stuff from when I grew up with, like I have a picture of Wayne Gretzky with my grandpa signed, like they met. So, you know, something like that is going to have that sentimental attachment, but yeah, it's tough. These questions are always hard because I like too much to say, oh yeah, there's that one thing. All right, we got a few more questions here. Bear with me. Toddzilla, is it worth collecting sealed product from this era, X, Y, Sun, Moon? I'm thinking about keeping them sealed for years. I'm 30 now, planning on keeping everything sealed, like in a time capsule for around 50, 55 years old. I pretty much have a little bit of everything all sealed, all mint, etc., etc., but I'd still like to hold some value down the road. If not, I love Pokemon, I love collecting. If the value isn't there in 20 years, I'll just hand it over to my kids. Love your videos, your knowledge and honesty is something that isn't enough on YouTube. I would say you kind of answered your own question on a personal basis. I'm in that camp too, where if I buy something, this is a great example of inflection points, what happens in a recession. If you buy something at a certain price, let's say it gets cut in half, what's the incentive to sell? Unless you desperately need money, why would you sell the thing that got cut in half? So, yeah, I can't, like earlier, no one can tell you what's going to happen in the future. We're still waiting for long-term with Modern. The only emergence we're seeing is with Japanese stuff. It's already started to grow because the supply was more limited than English. So who knows how long it's going to take. I just hope it's not like 1990 sports where it's just like this. 30 years like this. Pierce asks, back to Discord, who runs faster from Black Label Shiny Zards? Scott, Forrest Gump, or The Flash? Do you think BGS is trying to pull in some Pokemon market share by giving out so many Black Labels? Or is the print quality just that good? It's hard for me to believe that if those cards were cracked and resubmitted, they would get pristines, let alone Black Labels. I don't believe in any for consistency with BGS grading. Yes to all. Yes, reply all, yes. I agree. I think BGS is not as consistent with Pokemon. And the Black Label thing, I think it's more of a testament to condition. I wouldn't be surprised with the whole controversy with sports and all that. Wouldn't be surprised if there's something happening. I'm definitely not going to make that claim. But the condition in general is just crazy. It's crazy. And that's why I'm always telling people we're already at, 5 now? Black Label. By the time this video comes out, there's probably going to be another Black Label. So, Afterglow. What do you think of PSA 9s? I know they can veer off direction quick, but more... You got a lot. There's a lot happening here. A lot of punctuation. I'm trying my best. In my opinion, PSA 10s will eventually be too drowned out in the market. When do you think that people who have PSA 9s, base, etc., prices would start to rise? Okay. In general, PSA 9 is the best value purchase because if you look at the pop report, the bell curve hits at 8 to 9 for packed fresh WotC cards. So as far as grading is concerned, that's where your highest quantity is probably going to be. Therefore, value as far as price point for a collector is optimal. Now, make money, probably on side 10s. I would say, though, in a recession, the higher quantity 10s in the pop, in my opinion, are going to be the first things to drop in a recession. Where with 9s, when you're buying a 9 at $30 and that's already at cost or below of buying it raw and grading yourself, I don't think it could drop much more. So that's my general perspective. Neil asks, I have the entire Pokemon Pikachu set, all 18 cards, all 3 GX cards, the 4 promo cards. I'm wondering what I could sell this for or what it's worth. Just check eBay complete listings. I don't know off the top of my head. Stefan asks, hey, can you help me out with this? Would you recommend collecting WotC Unlimited Hollows? Can you touch on the legitimacy reselling PSA cases? Okay, there's a lot here. Unlimited Hollows, they're not as popular as first edition. Who knows what they'll be in the future. As far as scamming, resealing PSA cards, that's not that common. It's usually very easy to spot. There are a couple people who tried it. There's actually a guy who tried it within a week, shut down. They were immediately shut down by PSA. So it's not a thing you truly have to worry about. You have to worry about more about fake image listing type deals where they list an image of a card they don't own. Last but not least, King Gary, King Pokemon asks, why Japanese? It's probably a great one to close with because this could be its own topic in itself. And I noticed Gary always has a bone to pick with Japanese because he started in the WotC era when everything was exploding in the US. And, you know, WotC to this day is like the core of what people grew up with. But I think, first and foremost, Pokemon's a Japanese franchise. That's a good place to start. So Japanese franchise, Japanese IP. More specifically, here, get ready for it, Gary. Here's the big brain answer. We are the foreigners. The Japanese cards aren't foreign cards. If it's a Japanese business, if it's a Japanese brand, the Japanese cards are the original. We are the foreigners. So when we say things like, oh, foreign based, like, you know, French, you know, Italian, German, whatever it is, they are also foreign. But there's a bit of a conflation there I think people don't separate because majority of the market is definitely in the English-speaking area. So it's assumed to be, because majority of the market is there and the highest numbers are there for set cards, that, you know, it's the language. But in reality, no, Pokemon was out in 96 in Japan. We didn't get it till 99 because we are the foreigners in that regard. But with that said, in relation to Japanese in general, there's so many cards that don't exist in English. More specifically, this type of stuff. This type of stuff is what it's all about. There goes Ladybug. This type of stuff is what it's all about for me. It's like this unique art, unique moment in time. You know, especially when you get into like the Trophy Kangaskhan, Unicarp, Tropical Wind, beautiful artwork, ties into the event, moment in history, is organically rare. It does everything. Now, set cards, WotC is where it's at. English in general is for sets. Japanese, I would say, is mostly promos. However, that's shifting a bit in the modern era. The thing I would say that's different from WotC era is modern Japanese is more allocated. That's why earlier when we were talking about modern and the movement 10 years from now, the only thing that has emerged is Japanese because it is more allocated. So it's not the same complexion that it was back in the 90s where you had a lot of old back cards from sets that to this day are still very gradable and in better condition. It's different. As we've seen with the Black Label Charizard, it's a completely different market. English stuff is very easily gradable. There are more pristine Charizard GX cards than BGS 9. That's all anybody needs to know. So the condition is now at the same level. Where before, WotC was harder to grade, Japanese condition was better. Now I think it's pretty much an even platform. We'll see where it goes, because I think they vary per set. But in general, for why Japanese, it's because it's a Japanese hobby, and there are certain things that Japan offers that we never get. And it's always going to be that way. It's always going to be that way. And that's why, Porque no los dos, you should collect both and collect what you enjoy. Maybe one thing to also close with is the most valuable cards are all Japanese. That's another thing maybe people forget, is that outside of Charizard First Edition Base 10, that's like the exception. Take that one out, you really see the contrast. I mean, the best way to illustrate this is, no pun intended, the Authentic Illustrator recently sold for $65,000 in Yahoo in a restricted market, not even on an open market like eBay or an auction house. And that was just a PSA Authentic. You know, that's above any English card, leaps and bounds. So that's another reason why Japanese is the most valuable cards are there as well. But again, Porque no los dos. So there you go, guys. That is what I have. Thank you again for all the support. I'm going to try to do this maybe every 3 or 4 months or so if I can work it in. But like I said earlier, I'm going to do this every month on Patreon starting next month. What I do is I do a monthly market recap, talk about modern, vintage, some of my sales, some of my purchases. I talk about what I think is overrated, underrated, maybe throw in some bigger deals that are happening behind the scene. And then at the end of that, you'll ask me your questions. I'll do just like this, read them in the middle of the month, answer them in the middle of the month. You get 2 videos per month in Patreon that are exclusive to Patreon, $10 and above. So there it is. I can't tell you how much this means I've gotten here. 10K was probably my ultimate goal. So I appreciate all the support. And I'm just going to continue to keep on keeping on. So there it is, guys. Don't want to make this video any longer. You know the deal. Tell me how you feel. Till next time.